This is Democracy Watch. Mark, with the cancellation forced at the hands of this government of Jimmy Kimmel's show, I'm curious first and foremost about the legal exposure that the government, the FCC, would have, because we've seen the government violate the First Amendment to the most blatant degree, which is them leaning on a private entity to try and coerce certain behavior. And so what kind of legal exposure does the government, does the Trump administration, does the FCC have by virtue of this action regarding Jimmy Kimmel?
Okay, let me just correct one thing you said. What they did here is they coerced speech. Okay, it's not that they coerced some activity, they coerced core First Amendment speech. I mean, basically, Donald Trump doesn't like the fact that Jimmy Kimmel makes fun of him. Some of Donald Trump's supporters didn't like the fact that Jimmy Kimmel commented on the death and murder of Charlie Kirk in the way that he did. That is just pure speech. Nothing else. It's not action. It's not threat. It's nothing. It is just pure speech. And the misuse of the federal government, of the Federal Communications Commission, to say to a broadcast licensee, we can do this the easy way or we can do this the hard way. As Ted Cruz said, it'd be terrible if something happened to your broadcast license. I mean, I can't believe that me and Ted Cruz are on the same side.
Yeah.
Is as blatant an affront to the First Amendment as we have seen in decades. I mean, it is breathtakingly offensive to the First Amendment, which means it is breathtakingly illegal and unconstitutional. And so if you ask me, what exposure would the FCC have? Well, that would depend on whether or not the folks over at Disney had an ounce of spine,
right?
Had any backbone. Because if they did, and they challenged this, they would win in every court, at every level, slam dunk. And I mean every level. I mean, the Supreme Court, they'd lose 9-0. They'd win, the FCC would lose 9-0. This is one of these things, Brian, like the law firms. Remember when we talked about the law firms being targeted? And, the question was like, well, the law firms are standing up versus law firms that capitulate. And I said, look, every law firm that stands up against Donald Trump's illegal executive order is going to win, and they're going to win quickly in every level. And they did.
Yep.
And so that would be the case here. So, Brian, I turn this back to you. What the hell could possibly justify the kinds of capitulation and the cowardice that we are seeing from yet another group of media executives? And by the way, these are recidivist media executives. These folks already fired, remember, Terry Moran. These folks already paid $16 million to Donald Trump to settle the bogus case. So these, I don't know why anyone would trust Disney or ABC News with anything. But if you ask your question about what exposure the FCC would have, it would be a lot if Bob Iger and Disney had a backbone.
Correct. And they don't, for two reasons. And one is that the goal for them is not to try and win some First Amendment lawsuit. It is to do whatever they have to do, to bow down, to capitulate to whatever extent they need to, so that they can get their merger, Nexstar and Tegna, approved, so that they can have access to something like 80% of the local affiliate stations across the U.S. And so that's their goal here. That was the hope. That was the impetus for all of this. They wouldn't have stepped in any of this mess if they didn't need that merger approved by the FCC at the same time that the FCC was saying, hey, we really don't like what Jimmy Kimmel is saying. If you catch my drift, we're also the ones that are going to be responsible for giving a waiver for this merger that you need. That, by the way, violates FCC rules. So that's the first thing. But the second thing is that they viewed the ire of Donald Trump as the biggest financial cost for them. And I think they wrongly assumed, and I hope that they wrongly assumed, that the biggest financial cost should be the reputational harm that comes at the hands of consumers. So the impetus is on us, on the consumers, on the people who pay for Disney and Hulu and ABC and ESPN and any other entities that are owned by this company to say, hey, if you're going to capitulate to Donald Trump because you're just that desperate to consolidate more money, more wealth for your shareholders, whatever it may be, that you're also going to bear a financial penalty from the people who actually consume that content. And that was what was missing in all of this, because these corporations think that the only problem standing in the way of getting more money is going to be Donald Trump. And so whatever they have to do to capitulate to Donald Trump, to bend the knee to Donald Trump, is going to be worth it financially. Our job is to show them that there is a cost to doing that, and that cost is even heavier than the cost of ignoring Donald Trump or opposing Donald Trump. And so, look, I can speak for myself. The second this happened, I went ahead and canceled my Hulu service. I know a lot of people are doing the same. I'm not a huge boycott every single entity that doesn't align with my political beliefs, but in this instance, I think that the move that they made was so egregious in terms of how they capitulated to Donald Trump and puts the rest of the country, it's not just them. This doesn't just impact ABC and Disney and Hulu and those specific entities. This emboldens Donald Trump to move forward like a bull when he goes after the next one and the next one. And by the way, we know he's going to do it because he does it every fucking time. We've seen him go after CBS and Paramount and New York Times and 60 Minutes and Washington Post and LA Times. He does it every time. You give him an inch, he takes a mile every time without fail. And so every time you have one of these ABCs who gives him an inch, it only further emboldens Donald Trump to know that, hey, when I want to go after the next one, now I know how easy it's going to be because I've seen how weak the subsequent opponents I've had are. And so this isn't just ABC impacting ABC. This is ABC weakening the entire ecosystem, whether it's law firms or universities or media companies, and giving Donald Trump carte blanche, a clear runway to know that he can do it to the next person and the next person and the next person.
Yeah. And one of the things that I find particularly offensive, and I say this as someone who is a news consumer, I say this as someone who is the founder of Democracy.com, an independent news outlet, that it is even more galling that the legacy media, ABC News, has told us for years that they will report without fear or favor. Okay, that's their phrase, right? We will report without fear or favor. That's the standard thing that legacy media says. What about ABC's behavior suggests that they are not operating out of fear?
Yeah.
What in the way in which they are just jumping at every time they are told to jump suggests they are not operating at Donald Trump's favor. They think that this is helping their business. They think because they'll have mergers, this will help their business. Well, they are in the business, as you say, of attracting people to consume their product. And so some people will be alienated from consuming their product because they are offended by what they're doing. But there will be others who won't want to consume their product because they won't believe the product is what it claims to be. I mean, if they put a different late night talk show host on, who is going to believe that talk show host is actually providing the humor and the comedy that they want, rather than what the corporate suits at ABC want? So in some ways, they are actually destroying the very foundation of what a media company is about, which is a trust relationship with the audience. And look, ask Jeff Bezos and the folks at the Washington Post what happened to their subscriber base when they broke that trust. Look at the ratings at CNN when they broke that trust. Look at what's going on with the LA Times out in your neck of the woods when that trust is broken. And I don't understand how these very smart people, even from a business standpoint, don't get what kind of damage they are going to do when they break this trust, because the consumers are not idiots. They know when what they are getting are just, corporatized talking points.
Right.
And what they're getting is the truth. And frankly, what we're getting right now, as you say, is just a bunch of bullshit. It's just a bunch of lies. And everyone, who they are counting on watching their shows and consuming their news products knows it's a bunch of lies and a bunch of bullshit.
I think it's worth noting, too, that these major, multinational conglomerates that own these media outlets are so vulnerable is because they're over-leveraged, is because they own so much. And so inevitably, they're going to have other properties in front of the federal government that they need some exception for, some exemption for, some waiver for, some approval for. And so in turn, that puts them in a position where they're owned by this administration. And this administration is going to use every opportunity they have to extract something out of these companies, which is why, by the way, I think it's so important that you have Democracy Docket, which is the outlet you founded to focus on everything voting and elections. It's 100% independent. And so you are not over leveraged. You don't have any properties in front of the federal government. You don't need approval for them. They don't own you in any way that, the ABCs of the world are owned, or the NBCs or the CBSs, whatever it may be, and therefore are not compromised because you need something from the federal government. So I'm going to take this opportunity right now, in light of what we're seeing right now, which is a major failure at the hands of these legacy media outlets that have promised for so long that they're going to be the ones to uphold democracy. A small step that we can all take to actually support some truly fearless independent journalism that operates without fear or favor when it comes to the federal government is to sign up for Democracy Docket. I'm going to put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. That'll help elevate Marc's voice, elevate the voices of Marc's team who are actually fighting against this administration without needing something from them or capitulating to them or emboldening them in any way.
I want to thank you for that, but I also want to make an additional point and get your reaction to what just happened in the Oval Office, because it is not just that these folks are capitulating, and it's not just that they are bending a knee, but then Donald Trump takes the opportunity to tell them how little respect he has for them. So I'm going to take the opportunity here to play a clip of Donald Trump interacting with John Karl of ABC News in the Oval Office.
I want to settle this free speech question, because you've said that you restored free speech in America.
Yeah.
Is that free speech including for people who are harshly critical of you, for your political opponents, for people who say things you don't like?
I've become immune to it.
You unfairly?
I've become immune to it. There's never been a person that's had more unfair publicity than me, and that's why your network paid me $15 million, or $16 million, I believe, to be exact, George Slopadopoulous. And that's why CBS paid me a lot of money, too. And that's why I sued the New York Times 2 days ago for a lot of money. Because I'm winning. I'm winning the cases. And the reason I'm winning is because you're guilty, John. You're guilty. ABC is a terrible network, a very unfair network, and you should be ashamed of yourself. NBC is equally bad. I don't know who's worse. I think they're equally bad. And, for you to stand there and act so innocent and ask me a question like that. But look, you paid a big price because you were dishonest, John. The reason I won that lawsuit was because you were dishonest. You were proven to be dishonest. And so you can't sit back and just say, oh, well, what do you think? Like you're some wonderful person. You're not a wonderful person. Frankly, you're a terrible reporter. You know it, and so do I. Okay.
All right. So that is, Brian, what happens when you capitulate, right? The president of the United States rubs your nose in it and says, you paid us money, so you must have been guilty. You paid us money, so you probably shouldn't have a license. Like, don't these folks realize that they don't even get from Donald Trump what they think they're going to get? He has less respect for them when they capitulate than when they stand up.
Yeah. It's the perfect point. You think you're buying allegiance with Donald Trump. He respects you less when you refuse to fight back, when you capitulate. And like we've seen with all of these, there have been law firms, for example, where they've promised him some amount of money and he just ramps it up. And by then he already owns you. So what are you going to do? You're going to push back? He's already shown that how weak you actually are. This is not, none of these are being done. None of these agreements are being done in good faith. Instead, it is the polar opposite. He just proves the extent to which you are weak. He owns you. He loses respect for you. And ultimately, in the very end, he doesn't need anything from you. And so he'll discard you the moment you lose your usefulness. And we're seeing that play out in real time. So again, I would just highly recommend for anybody who's watching right now, if you want to support fearless independent journalism in light of the failures of legacy media, please sign up for Democracy Docket. I'm going to put that link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. I'll also put the link to this YouTube channel up on the screen. If you're not yet subscribed, please do me a favor and subscribe. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Marc Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.